Now, Vodacom is unveiling a master plan to dominate the continent's remittance market. The CEO of the telecoms company, Sermae Taukobong, aims to make their mobile platform a remittance hub, competing with MTN and other additional providers on lower fees. With over 73.5 million subscribers in 7 countries, Vodacom is eyeing a $5 billion international money transfer market. And joining us to unpack the strategic border expansion plan in greater details is technology correspondent for Business Day, Mudiwa Kavaza. Mudiwa, always a pleasure and a good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Olutando.
I think before we get into it, this remittance market is huge, Mudiwa.
Massive.
Let's talk about just how big it is.
Okay, cool. So, interestingly enough, last week I sat in on a very fascinating presentation. Funny enough, it was from the competitor, that's MTN, because we were at AfricaCom last week, and Bradwin Roper, who runs MTN's financial services unit in South Africa, actually gave a presentation there, about the different corridors, right? That's what they talk about. And by corridors, they mean, right, a corridor can be, let's say, I think it should be Ivory Coast to Nigeria, right? That's the biggest one, if I remember correctly. So they're saying that on the African continent, that is, the corridor in which you have the most money, going between, 2 countries. The data shows that South Africa is the country from which you are probably getting the most money sent out of, and then Nigeria is the country that you're getting the most money in, right? Because you have a lot of Africans that relocate to places like South Africa and are sending, money home, and then Nigerians have a huge diaspora and they are sending money home from all over the world. It's not just Africa, right? So you've got a lot of Nigerians in places like the UK, the US, all over the world that are sending money back. So that's why Nigeria becomes the biggest inbound market. But in that you have these, different corridors. South Africa, Zimbabwe is a big corridor. I think Nigeria to South Africa is a big one. So Ivory Coast, so you have these different corridors that are happening there. And now what's happening is that you've had traditional remittance players that have been in the market for years, right? Think World Remit, MoneyGram, Remitly, Mukuru, right? All being, players that have been doing it here. 3 of the ones that I've just mentioned are international, and Mukuru has sort of become the one that a lot of people know as being the African one, right? They have around 13 million or so customers that make use of their product, lots of integration. So now the biggest advantage that the mobile operators are taking advantage of is they already have these huge subscriber bases across the continent. So let's just plug in a remittance type of product and do the most.
Very, very interesting. I mean, so you speak about these traditional players, but we're seeing these telcos move into it. This is an organic step, Mudiwa. Is it something that is evidence of a sector that already has such an infrastructure in place? And this is it will take some tweaking, but it is a lot of plug and play.
Well, it just depends on which way you look at it, but I would say that it is quite organic, because if you think about it, right, it's quite natural that if you're Vodacom and you operate in these 8 countries, and by that I'm also including Kenya and Safaricom, if you're operating on all of these countries and you're saying that fintech, M-Pesa and VodaPay is a big part of your strategy, then it's only natural that you're then going to say, why can't a person from South Africa send money from a mobile wallet into, let's say, a mobile wallet in Kenya, and the such. That is the natural evolution. And in September, we saw MTN doing exactly that. Now, this is not to say that Vodacom hasn't been in the market, right? They have been in the market, but their main way in which they've been in the market, the traditional players that I've just spoken about now, right? They've had an integration with M-Pesa, where basically you can, for example, let's say you bank with Nedbank, right? You can use a service like World Remit and just go into World Remit, register an account, and you can literally get money out of your Nedbank into someone's M-Pesa account in less than 5 minutes. Your money has already arrived on someone's, on someone's phone. So they've already been, in that market, but now they're trying to add the different layers. So that's the plan that Sermae was trying to tell me about, to say this is what we're trying to do.
Yes, let's talk about that plan, because it's very comprehensive. I think it's 5 steps. So let's talk about that plan.
Cool. So the biggest piece is they have to, whether they like it or not, regulation. They must make sure. That's one of the biggest things that sort of hinders things here, because think about the EU, right? If you're an operator in the EU and you put something like this together, then it's likely that you can just go live in all your various markets.
Yes.
But in Africa, you sort of have to be negotiating country by country. And we sort of saw it with MTN. When they launched their remittance service in September, they were doing 10 countries, right? But I think now they've upped it to 12. So you can see slowly, you're doing it. And regulation tends to be a big one, right? Making sure that you're ticking the boxes with the different regulators. We already know that financial services, highly regulated, around the world. So regulation is one piece. The second piece is making sure that you've got, for them, they've had all these different players that we're talking about that have integrated with M-Pesa. And then your third piece then becomes getting even more of the international players to then come in. Because as they open up to new markets, think the fact that Vodacom and Safaricom have recently started operating in Ethiopia and Egypt, right? You're opening yourself up to a different type of diaspora, for example. So Egypt, for example, it would make sense that Middle Eastern countries should be able to easily send money into those fintech wallets for Vodacom. Is it Vodafone Egypt? Yeah, until they do the rebranding. Fourth layer is M-Pesa to M-Pesa, right? M-Pesa to M-Pesa, M-Pesa to VodaPay, all these different things that Vodacom has, because they've got VodaCash, VodaPay, and M-Pesa. Those are their main ones. And then just making sure that they have that cross-integration. And then lastly, integration with even your competitors as well, because you can't exist in a vacuum. At some point, you should be able to send money from your mobile wallet on MTN into your mobile wallet on Vodacom.
It'll be very interesting times with you. I know you and I will be speaking about it throughout. Thank you for your time. And today, it's always a pleasure hearing from you and learning from your very interesting sector. That was technology correspondent for Business Today, Mudiwa Gavaza.